of the meeting. So we have that. And I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so everyone should be seeing my slide deck now.
Hey Ryan, before we get
Mhm.
started, can we do
Yeah,
quick intros? Just everybody say who they are, which district they represent.
yeah, absolutely. I'm Ryan Stewart. I'm a planner here with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development, and I'm the project manager for the Fairfax Center Area Phase 3 planning study. And I will open it up to whoever would like to introduce themselves.
We'll start with the supervisor.
So I'll go ahead and start. Hi, I'm Rachna Sizemore-Heiser. I'm the proud new Braddock supervisor, although I almost 3 months in, I don't think I can say new anymore. And I'm very, very excited about the Fairfax Center area study in the core area, and especially around placemaking as we build towards really creating like the main street of Fairfax in an area that people think of as uniquely Fairfax and, builds connection and community. So I'm very excited to be here.
Great. I'm Mary Cortina. I'm co-chair along with the Springfield district, but I'm the Braddock district representative on the Planning Commission. And I look forward to working with everyone as we continue through the process. And thank you, Ryan, for keeping us all on track.
I'll go next. James Thomas, the Springfield Commissioner, and happy to be here. And thanks so much for all your help.
I'll go next. I'm Stephanie Sedgwick, and I'm with the Office of Rachna Sizemore Heiser as your Senior Director of Policy and Engagement.
How about the other Braddock Task Force members?
Yes. Hi, I'm Sabrina Mateen. I am also here on behalf of the Braddock District. I own a small business in the core area, and I actually live there as well. So I'm very, very excited to be here with you all tonight.
Did I see Carrie?
Hi, Carrie. Maybe we've got an audio issue here, Carrie. We'll go on to the Springfield representatives.
Sure, I can go real quick. Jimmy Shaughnessy on the Civilian Land Use Panel, Springfield Task Force, West Springfield Burke resident, and my day job is I'm a program manager for a national park advocacy organization.
Okay, thanks, Jimmy. And our other Springfield member is Theo. He's not available on the call right now, I don't believe, but he may be joining us here shortly. He did say he RSVP'd yes, so we will see him shortly. And then, of course, we've got members of staff as well, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
I'll go next. I'm Graham Owen, and I work with Ryan Stewart over in the planning department. Nice to see everybody.
I can go next. Ashley Denner. I'm with Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Nice to see everyone this evening.
And my name's Tom Burke. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Department of Transportation as well.
Good evening, all. I'm Sahar Hamdard, working as a planner in DPD. Thank you.
And let's see, I know we've got two members of the community here. We've got Brian Clifford, who represents the owners of the Fair Oaks Mall. I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to say anything or.
Hi, Brian Clifford, Senior Land Use Planner with DLA Piper. I represent some of the owners of Fair Oaks Mall, not all of them.
Yes.
Happy to listen in this evening. Good to see everybody.
And we have a new face in the group, Stuart Holt.
Hi,
Don't mean
everybody.
to put you on the spot, but
No, that's all right. I'm Stuart Holt. I'm the president and CEO of Arts Fairfax, and I'm happy to be on the call to see about the intersection between public art and creative placemaking.
Great, excellent. So again, everyone, I just want to say welcome to everyone for taking time out of your evening to join us this evening. This is really the fourth meeting of the task force. And we are slowly getting to the point of really doing some real collaborative work here on the Fairfax Center Area's core area. Just a few housekeeping notes that tonight's meeting is, of course, recorded, as you saw earlier. The recording and slides will be posted on the project's website. And then by default, everyone will be muted during the portion of the presentation. But if you'd like to speak, please raise your virtual hand. There's a react button here on Zoom. And then if I don't happen to see it, one of my staff members here will call on you, and we'll stop periodically for questions and comments and things. But we'll give a short presentation here, and then hopefully the majority of our time this evening will be task force discussion. And so tonight's meeting really focuses on placemaking, and we want this again to be interactive, participatory, and we really want to hear from the task force. So to set the stage, we'll talk about what placemaking is, and we'll share some examples of successful placemaking throughout the county and elsewhere. And we'll then start to apply these concepts to the core area itself. So for tonight's goals, again, we want to create a shared understanding of placemaking and look at how we might be able to apply placemaking to the core area. We'll discuss some existing opportunities. We'll identify some new opportunities, hopefully, and we'll begin to map out a specific vision for what the core area will look like over the next 20 to 30 years, or the planning horizon of the comprehensive plan. And all of this is to help us inform our understanding of the next meetings, where we'll start to talk about the individual development concepts and ideas put forward for building out the core area in advance of metro arrival or BRT or some other form of mass transit. But really, this meeting tonight was requested by the task force to get a better understanding of how we can apply placemaking and make this a place that people want to visit and want to spend their time. So what is placemaking? Well, placemaking features very prominently in our comprehensive plan. Particularly, it's used to guide development in our activity centers, such as the Fairfax Center Area, where we are today. So here's the official definition, and I'll read it for the benefit of the video and for the record. But placemaking refers to a collaborative community process by which the public realm is shaped to strengthen the connection between people and places. More than promoting better urban design, placemaking facilitates creative patterns of use, paying particular attention to the physical, cultural, and social identities that define a place and support its ongoing evolution for the benefit of all. Intentionally shaping open spaces and streets capitalizes on a local community's assets, inspiration, and the potential to improve vitality while creating accessible, safe places. Well, that's a definition, but what does that actually mean in practice? That's kind of the formal technical definition, but really what it's talking about is placemaking is an intentional, community-driven design process that looks at the public realm, and it creates a place that people want to visit and stay. In many ways, it's both an art and a science, and it relies on both the technical details of architecture and design, and also the less measurable factor of how people relate to a place. So you can think of it just as homemaking refers to turning a house into a home. Placemaking takes a space and turns it into a desirable place for people. And it is tailored to the individual place. And so just like we all have our own preferences for how we keep our houses, placemaking is tailored to the individual place itself. But it does share some common elements. First of all, it is, on the slide, it is collaborative and community driven, and it reflects the uniqueness of the community. It's not done in isolation, and it does require the work of the public sector, private entities, and community groups to create a vision that makes sense for everyone, and it is something that is achievable and implementable. It is people first when it comes to how we relate to the built environment, and it provides opportunities for everyone. That's regardless of age or socioeconomics or family status or anything like that. We really want to provide a place where all people feel welcome. Traditionally, 20th century design has focused on the automobile. Think, strip malls and places with large parking lots or standalone office parks, much like the way the Fairfax Center Area was historically envisioned. Placemaking, on the other hand, really has a focus on safe, walkable streets, pedestrian scale design, and it really seeks to accommodate all modes of transit. It doesn't seek to get rid of the automobile, but it certainly wants to promote other methods of transit for those people that choose to use them, and to make things convenient and walkable, and allowing for people to access the daily services and amenities that they need to access in a way that's convenient to them. And it can really transform an area. The idea here is that we are creating enjoyable, attractive, and social places, places that can foster economic development, focused development and growth in these areas. And given that this is going to be a 20 to 30-year plan for the core area, it's very important that these spaces are adaptable and they are able to respond to the changing of community preferences over time. So when we talk about a place, what makes a great place? When you think of your favorite place in Fairfax County, what makes it special? I really like this graphic from the Project for Public Spaces because it really shows the factors and considerations that go into intentional placemaking. You can see here, you've got a variety of things, everything from talking about connectivity, the access and linkages. You've got different land uses, kind of activities that people might do in an area. You've got how people feel, what the place looks like, whether people feel comfortable. Is this a safe? Is this a walkable area? And you've got social elements as well, such as how can other people interact with others? How can they enjoy the company of others, foster those social networks, and really cater to a wide variety of social needs. But you can see that all of these factors are both qualitative and quantitative as well. Data plays a big role in how we plan our places, but equally important is how people feel and their values and their preferences and their sensibilities and how they react to a place. These all play a role. And so, for example, we may have traffic data that would suggest a certain solution to connectivity, like, for example, an on-street bike lane. But if folks aren't comfortable with that solution, and maybe they've had bad experiences with on-street lanes and other places, that solution isn't going to work for the long term. And so, in evaluating each of these, factors, we look at both the supporting data, but also, the human element as well. But again, this wheel is all about considerations, and there's no one place that's going to meet all of these criteria for everyone. And there are going to be trade-offs in these criteria. So in evaluating them, it's important to keep those trade-offs in mind. So I mentioned earlier that placemaking is a vital part of the comprehensive plan. And here's the county-wide policy, which was, we just reviewed this and updated this in December of 2025 with our new policy plan update. But the idea here is that the Fairfax County encourages placemaking through the use of high-quality urban design principles that prioritizes open spaces and complete streets that are accessible, inclusive, safe, active, and open for all to enhance the built environment. I took the liberty of underlining some key phrases in here and some key words, and you'll see that this is really the essence of placemaking, is looking at urban design, looking at how the built environment and open spaces interact, and then looking at complete streets. And we'll get into each of these topics here very shortly, but that is the essence really of placemaking in Fairfax County. And the adopted comprehensive plan vision for the Fairfax Center Area's core also includes specific placemaking elements, all of which have a goal of creating a mixed-use, walkable, more urban-style area. And so I won't read each of these in detail, but you can see that it touches on elements of urban design when it comes to building orientation and site layouts. Looking at connectivity such as sidewalks, bike lanes, signage as a key part of that transportation network, looking at more of the aesthetics of the area, such as gateway features, public art. So of course, I'm glad you're on the call because that is going to be a key part of the plan here. The location of plazas, landscaping, and architecture to really define what is it about the core area here in Fairfax Center that is uniquely Fairfax Center, and that's one of the things that we'll need to discuss as a group here is how can we better reflect, how can we get this area to really reflect the character of the community, and then also looking at how the streetscape is activated, storefront windows, areas where people can browse and walk down the street, landscaping, public areas such as plazas or outdoor cafes or things of this nature, And then finally, having a network of urban parks and open spaces that are tightly integrated into the design of the core area and really are able to complement the built environment. And then along with the written text of the plan in the guidance, we also have what we call the use-specific performance criteria. And this is really a kind of an appendix to the core area guidance that includes how development should take place within Fairfax Center area. And so we see it speaks to urban design, it speaks to the need for mixed-use development, building architecture and site layout, landscaping and open space. These are 3 examples here, and you can kind of see the intent of, down here on the left, you've got a residential neighborhood, including a park and a school that might include a small commercial center along with some pedestrian open space. And you can see how these areas all relate to each other. And then we've got another example of a building. In this case, it looks like a commercial building or perhaps an apartment building. It's got a parking garage on the ground floor level. Perhaps that's also underground as well. And there's an emphasis on screening that building to make sure that it is compatible with the surrounding uses. And then we have an environmental example up top here where we've got a retention pond that's, of course, required for stormwater management at the time, but it's also been repurposed to have a recreational function as well. So perhaps at this retention pond, you may see some seating areas for passive recreation, or perhaps a walking trail, or something of this nature, where you're combining the environmental elements with the placemaking elements, so that we as humans can still benefit from what would otherwise simply be required to manage stormwater. And these placemaking elements are also desired by the community. This was the community poll that we conducted back in summer of 2024. And I believe you've seen these results before, but essentially we know that people wanted to see more green space and parks, more trails, more civic spaces and activities, mixed use, shopping, dining, and so forth. And these are all things, in this list here that can be provided using a placemaking approach. And so, not only do we have the policy that backs us up, but we have the community desire for these places as well. Now, the key thing here before we get into kind of some examples of placemaking is you can see again the adopted core area vision here can really be implemented through a placemaking approach using urban design, using a thoughtful approach to our streetscape and our amenities, pedestrian and bicycle connections, which I mentioned, and then of course having those integrated open space and parks, which I'll talk about here. But for right now, I'd like to pause briefly before we get into urban design and just ask if there are any questions from the task force or anyone that we can answer before moving forward.
I have a quick
If not, we'll go. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When you're looking at placemaking for this area, you're looking at the overall the larger area, not just the government center area, right? In terms of
absolutely. Yeah, we're looking at the entire core area,
like that, the whole corridor. So.
Yes, yeah. And you'll see here, we'll have some examples when we get into the more interactive part of the meeting here. We'll go over kind of some things that we've thought up and kind of ask for your advice on where we ought to go in terms of all of this. Great. So looking at urban design, let's kind of what do we mean by urban design? Well, here's the definition. I'm not going to read this because this is the official definition according to our comprehensive plan. But essentially, what it is it's a design approach where we're creating a desirable environment for people, and we do this by looking at the relationship between buildings, streets, land use, open space, circulation, building height, natural features, and then most importantly, how people use and relate to those spaces. And so we want to create a place where, again, people want to live, work, play, and ultimately spend their time. We are creating, in a sense, a community, and we need to look at those factors that create successful places. As within Fairfax Center and our other suburban centers, a big part of urban design is the ultimate goal of what we call transit-oriented development. This is where we are creating a pattern of development that relies on ready access to mass transit, whether that is metro rail or whether that is bus rapid transit or other means of a mass transit network. But the idea is that the highest intensity of land use is created around these stations, and then it would taper off by distance. And so you would have a node of development around, say, a metro station, for example. And I won't go into the real details of the transit-oriented development criteria. They're in the comp plan. You can see it's part of our land use policy plan element. But we look at how close we are to a given station, and we look at kind of how this area can develop and function as as a unique area around that station, keeping in mind the current community that's there and the desired community that we want to ultimately create. Of course, I mentioned many times our pedestrian bicycle access is key to this vision of creating access to transit. Having that mix of land uses where you've got a good mix of residential, commercial, and retail, institutional, and civic spaces. Looking at street design and how streets can be both forms of transit for cars, but also accommodate pedestrians and create a safe environment for folks that may be walking up and down the street or traveling to retail establishments and so forth. And then also that I mentioned earlier, that connectivity to the transportation network as well as a key function of the transit-oriented development. So here's an example of urban design in practice as it's shown in our comprehensive plan. This is the rest and west of Fountain Drive district. And you can see here, this is an urbanizing area where we've got a block of streets that provides for that connectivity and more of an urban form of development with that block of streets. You've got individual blocks named out, and each of these would have their own land use guidance for what might go into these blocks. But you also see an interconnected network of parks. We've got a mix of active and passive uses. We've got a newly created Edgewater Park here along Town Center Parkway. You've got a central green here that really provides a focal point for the development. You've got a recreational field there in Block 1. And so that's providing for some of the active recreational needs of residents in the area. And all of these uses are really designed to be planned around the North County Governmental Center. So you get an idea of what a government center might look like in more of an urbanizing context. And as part of the plan, you see with that government center, you see some civic uses as well. We've got a regional library. We've got a new elementary school that is going to be in the area, athletic field I mentioned, playground, also specifying where tree safe areas are and perhaps other community amenities. But the idea here is, not necessarily, we don't want to copy Reston, of course, because Fairfax Center is unique, but we do want to provide some examples of how placemaking has worked in other parts of the comprehensive plan and in other areas of the county. And so we can use these kind of as maybe some building blocks or some examples for our work here in the core area. Another example here, and this one is from the Richmond Highway Corridor. This one is neat because it provides a framework for transit-ready development that does not yet exist. This one is in the Woodlawn Commercial Business Center. And I think with this map, it's important to note just the thoughtfulness that went into how the area functions. And we look at, we look at the streetscape and we look at how people are getting around. We see the location of maybe some activated ground floors there in purple. So you can get a sense of where in the area around that BRT station, which is the asterisk or the dot there in the middle. We have the activated streetscape around that BRT station. We have some more activated streetscape farther down in the North Richmond Highway there along Lucan's Lane. And then you also see the inclusion of the parks and open spaces as a really key part of this plan here, and that you can see how we've thought about where these areas go in advance, and we can see how they connect directly into that transportation network and how each of these areas can complement each other. And then finally, you also see in the different shades of gray, you see different building heights. And so, right around that BRT station is where you would see the highest intensity of development. Those medium, 5 to 9 4-story buildings are kind of thought about as being key to that activity node around the BRT. And so, again, this is maybe something that we could implement for the Fairfax Center area, but I wanted to give this as an example of as we look at placemaking, we look at the relationship between the planned transit, we look at the connectivity, we look at the parks, building heights, and ultimately it goes back into what is the desired experience that we want folks who live here, who work here, and who visit here. What is that experience that we want them to have? Real quick, before we go on to pedestrian and bike connectivity, are there any questions on urban design? If not, I will go ahead and move forward because I do want to get to the most important part of the meeting here. When we talk about pedestrian and bike connectivity, let's just talk about a little bit here about the adopted plan that we have in the comprehensive plan for the Fairfax Center area. Now, of course, this being a key part of placemaking, a lot of thought and analysis is going into this area in terms of transportation planning. When we look at vehicles, which are right here on the left-hand side here, you see the vehicle network, and you can see the planned metro station there along I-66. You can see 66 is ultimately planned as a 10-lane highway, and the location of the metro station is there in the median. This particular map kind of gives a street typology as well. You can see where the arterial streets are and where the local streets might be, what is planned versus what is in existence today. For example, you can see a planned connector road just south of the metro station there, kind of bisecting Legato Road as kind of a planned connection between Route 66 and Route 29 in that general area, for example. And then you see here that on the right-hand side, this is the adopted bicycle master plan for the core area. And so you can see, for example, we have some buffered bike lanes along Government Center Parkway. For the most part, these have been implemented, but then you'll see if you've driven in the area of the Government Center lately, you've also seen along Post Forest Drive, there's been some construction. These are the planned bike lanes that are being put into place between Government Center Parkway and West Ox Road. So if you're familiar with seeing those orange cones, that's what's going on there. But you get a sense here of where the main streets are that are planned for bicycle facilities. And then looking at the pedestrian realm, similarly here are the plans for trails. And we have here the adopted countywide trails plan delineates where trails ought to go. And so I don't have a key for this one, but you see along Monument Drive and along Government Center Parkway are shared use paths, which are designed to accommodate pedestrians, bicyclists, things of that nature. But again, it's shared use, and so it's multimodal. And then on the right-hand side here is the draft active transportation trails plan. This is actually going to the active transportation is going to the Planning Commission for public hearing in a few days here on March 11th, and then it'll be going to the Board of Supervisors on May 5th. And so by the time we get around to implementing the guidance here for Fairfax Center, we'll have that active transportation plan to rely on. Jimmy, I just saw that you had posted a question in the chat about buffered bike lanes. I don't know, Tom or Ashley, can you briefly describe what constitutes a buffered bike lane?
Yeah, I can hop on real quick. I was just going to type it in the chat, and Tom,
Okay.
if you have anything to include, please include. But I would say it varies between a lane that is striped. So I'm not sure if you've seen existing on the ground, especially by Government Center Parkway, and you'll see in a few concepts to come in our presentation. A buffered bike lane could either be with bollard post, which provides that physical separation between a vehicle on the roadway and the bicycle facility. If there aren't bollard posts existing, it could also look like striping. So it could look like maybe a 3-foot to even an 8-foot wide striping on the roadway. It'd be like vertical striping, whether sometimes it has reflective yellow reflectors within the striping or it's just standard white striping. So I hope that answered your question.
Good. Thanks, Ashley. And just to provide some examples, I mean, we're not looking at only the what's on the street or the trails or the connections. We're also looking at facilities themselves. And so, you can get a sense of, like, we've got some examples here of things that we may want to include in the core area that would foster that sense of multimodal connectivity, such as bike sharing stations. We have an example here of the new I-66 parallel trail that goes along I-66 in the Fair Lakes area. So this is, just west of the core area, but VDOT has provided a pit stop area in the area of, I believe it's the Michaels in Fair Lakes there. So again, it's a kind of a way station there for people to take a rest, be able to sit down, perhaps meet with friends, and continue on their journey. And then, just as an example of the types of trails that we already have in the core area, you see here the government center that provides for more of the kind of nature-based trails that provide for pedestrians, bicyclists, that sort of thing. And so you get a sense of, here in the core area, we already have a wide variety of different types of trails, and each of which has their own character. Now, closely related to all of this, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, is the idea of streetscapes and amenities as a key part of placemaking. So it's not only about getting from point A to point B, but it's about the experience of how folks get from point A to point B and the types of things that they experience. And so a key part of this is the idea of complete streets. And I'll go ahead and read this, but they're roadways designed and operated for safe use, accessibility, and mobility for all people using the roadway space. That's drivers, transit, active transportation, users of all ages and abilities. And this emphasizes the need for a comprehensive interconnected network. And so, this is really, really key when we talk about how folks are getting around in the core area. You can see here, as an example of streetscape design, this is in part of our comprehensive plan in Tysons. This is the South Tysons Central 7 subdistrict. Again, we're not trying to replicate Tysons in the Fairfax Center at all, but I wanted to provide an example here of what placemaking looks like in action. And so in this graphic, you can see where we've got an activated streetscape. And so you can kind of see there in the background, maybe an outdoor cafe or some seating places or places where people want to stay and linger and spend their time. You see the inclusion of some landscaping and street trees to kind of break up that provide a visual buffer against the built environment, but also the environmental benefits that, of course, street trees provide. The lighting in the street is, we want to provide areas that are safe to walk in at night, that are, visible. And so lighting is a key part of that. And, each area may have its own character of what that lighting might look like. You can see here, of course, pedestrian friendly design. For example, you see that crosswalk here in the middle where it's a separate paving treatment. You've got an area that is clearly designated as a crosswalk for safety reasons, and you see here where you've got a separation of pedestrians, vehicles, bikers, and so forth. And so all of which contributes not only to that sense of place, but also to safety as well. Another example here from the Richmond Highway Corridor. Now this is the Richmond Highway Corridor plan was a bit unique in that it introduced this idea of livability spines, which are essentially specialized streets that also include environmental elements, such as you might have a linear park, or you might have a stormwater swale. You can see here in the design guidance where that bioswale waterway is a key part of the streetscape. And so in this case, you've got a area not only serving as a transit corridor, but you've got an area serving as a linear park as well. And it's providing those environmental benefits. It's providing that stormwater benefit, but it's also providing areas for people to stop, people to relax, recreate, that sort of thing. But again, it's all about completeness. And so not only are we accommodating for vehicular traffic, we're accommodating for the environment, we're accommodating for pedestrians and for bicyclists, and also for any activation along the sidewalks and against the buildings as well. But again, these are just ideas of things that we may consider for the core area. These are things that came forward in the Richmond Highway Corridor that are in the plan today, and so we certainly have a number of examples that we can fall back on. In this particular case, here's another example of complete streets for the Richmond Highway Corridor. I've mentioned a lot of these things here on this slide, but just to show that these types of schematics can take all sorts of different forms. In this case, you've got maybe a less of a livability spine and more of a typical streetscape design, where we've got the sidewalk against the building zone. You've got landscaping. This particular example has an amenity zone, which may serve more of a relaxation or a social purpose. Perhaps this could be an area where you might have something like, I don't know, like outdoor chess or something along those things. So it's an area that's activated. It's a place where people want to stop and maybe visit with each other. Maybe this is an area where folks are waiting for transit or something along those lines. But you can see this even gets down to the detail of what sort of pavers ought to be provided in the street. So you see lots of different examples and lots of different ways that this can be expressed. Here's an example from outside the county. This is from the City of Boston's Complete Streets Guide. I like this because it's comprehensive. I won't go through all of these different points, but you can see that it doesn't just address the built environment, but it also speaks to things like maybe having some integrated digital information. So folks with smartphones might be able to do like maybe a virtual tour of the area or provide some wayfinding that way. Introduction of accessible surfaces, and so folks of all sorts of different different ways of accessing areas. That could be by bike, stroller, wheelchair, by foot, so forth. So providing areas that accommodate all of those different types of uses. The use of intelligent signals, traffic cameras, and things to help better manage traffic flow and make it a safer environment. Electric vehicle charging stations. Now, all of these things are integrated as part of the complete streets. And then here's another example from Seattle. I like this one because has more of a neighborhood feel to it, much more of kind of the character of Fairfax Center, where we've got lower height buildings. We've got an activated streetscape there that you can see with some awnings and perhaps some retail stores. You've got the inclusion of the bus lanes along a relatively small roadway, and of course the street trees and things like that. So just to give you a sense of kind of what some other jurisdictions are doing when it comes to streetscape. And I hope that you can see how the streetscape really helps to form the identity of a place and how people are experiencing things at the street level. To talk a little bit more about this, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley with the Department of Transportation. She's going to go through some ideas that she's come up with for maybe how some of the streets within the core area can be designed to foster better streetscape. I'll go ahead and turn it over to her. And of course, these are all just ideas for discussion, but I'll go ahead and Ashley can go ahead and introduce your portion.
Awesome sauce. Thank you, Ryan, for that introduction. So I will be presenting on the existing conditions of Government Center Parkway, highlighted in yellow, Monument Drive, highlighted in pink, and Fair Lakes Parkway, highlighted in cyan, with street concepts showcasing draft future conditions to be considered for improvements. You'll also see on the screen highlighted in green is an indicator for an existing Main Street location within the SCA area, and it's to be used as an example for other potential locations identified in the future. Lastly, I just want to mention to determine these draft conditions, staff use the current county guidance from the Active Transportation and Trails Plan map for the following draft concepts that you'll be seeing this evening. The goal here is to create a more balanced multimodal corridor that serves drivers, transit users, cyclists, and pedestrians more effectively. Next slide, please. So to begin, we're going to talk about Government Center Parkway. Here we're looking at the current layout of existing conditions. This cross-section gives us a clear picture of an existing 127-foot right-of-way, which accommodates multiple travel lanes as well as pedestrian and bicycle facilities. Current bicycle facilities are 5 feet wide, bike lanes with limited separation from vehicles. And just a note, as it was asked in the chat about what are buffered bike lanes, you can see here demonstrated are 8-foot wide buffered, I guess you can call them buffer yards, They basically are just showing standard vertical striping that's buffering the vehicle roadway users from the bike lane facility. So it's just adding a little bit of that extra separation of the dedicated bicycle facility and the roadway users. You'll also see here pedestrian infrastructure, which includes a sidewalk on the eastern portion of the road and landscaping and open space, which provides some buffer between the roadway and surrounding area. Overall, in the existing conditions, this sets a good starting point for potential improvements in safety, accessibility, and multimodal use. Next slide, please. So here we have option A, where it's showcasing widened buffered yards to accommodate space for street trees, which results in shade and pedestrian separation. So you see here, what's a little bit different from the bicycle lane buffer yards, this is a grass buffer. This is just providing separation from between what's inside the curb, which is the roadway, which are currently is the vehicle lanes as well as those bicycle facilities. But what's outside of the curb are the pedestrian facilities. So here you'll see our multi-use trails along both sides of the road for safer and more comfortable travel for cyclists and pedestrians, maintaining the dedicated bike facilities with the inclusion of bollard posts. So those bollard posts are now within inside of that bike lane buffer lane. So it's adding a little bit of extra space, showing a little bit more indication that this is a bicycle facility and the vehicle drivers need to be aware of the bicyclist. Lastly, we also see the inclusion of ADA accessible transit stops to allow accessibility for all users. Overall, in this option, it provides safety, accessibility, and multimodal connectivity to support community growth. Next slide. So here we have option B, where the right-of-way has been widened to 134 feet to accommodate the space for sidewalks, trails, and buffer yards. This again includes a multi-use trail, as well as an enhanced sidewalk for safer, more comfortable use for pedestrian and cyclists. You also see again those additional elements such as the bollard posts for bike and vehicle separation and the widened buffers for street trees to add in that further separation between the pedestrians and the vehicle users. And then as well, ADA accessible transit stops. Within this option, this helps to balance the vehicle flow with safety, accessibility, and improve streetscape aesthetics. Next slide. So the second corridor we took a look at is Monument Drive. Here we're looking at the current layout of existing conditions. This cross section gives us a clear picture of an existing 109-foot right-of-way, which showcases a primarily vehicle-focused corridor. In addition to the traffic lanes, there is a landscape median, which provides some aesthetic and traffic separation. There also is some pedestrian infrastructure that shows a multi-use trail and transit stop being present with a minimal buffer yard on the eastern portion of the roadway, as well as bicycle accommodations that are limited here. Next slide. Here we have option A, where the right-of-way is now widened from 109 feet to 121 feet. This is to reallocate space for multimodal transportation. So again, here we're showing multi-use trails on both sides of the roadway for safer and more comfortable use for both the pedestrian and a cyclist, which further improves the connectivity along this corridor. We also see widened buffer yards and street trees to allow that separation from the traffic, adding shading and enhancing the streetscape. We also see the inclusion of ADA accessible transit stops, and the vehicle lanes here are to be maintained to preserve traffic flow. Overall, in this concept, it shows a balanced, complete street concept where safety, accessibility, and visual quality can support more users. Next slide. And then we have option B. Here we're seeing it expand to 128 feet of a right-of-way to support vehicles, transit use, and cyclists and pedestrians. Here we see the inclusion of a two-way protected cycle track. This is to allow an accommodation of a dedicated and separated space for cyclists, which can further encourage multimodal use within this corridor. Widened buffer yards and street trees are included with an enhanced sidewalk, multi-use trail, and ADA accessible transit stops. Overall, here we're seeing safety, accessibility, and long-term streetscapes improvements in this concept. Next slide. And then the last corridor we're going to take a look at is Fair Lakes Parkway. Here we're looking at the current layout of the existing conditions. This cross section gives us a clear picture of the existing 101-foot right-of-way, which showcases a primarily vehicle-focused corridor. Existing today are bidirectional traffic lanes with turning movements and a center median. Pedestrian infrastructure shows narrow sidewalks and minimal buffers, which can result in limited comfort and safety for users. And lastly, bicycle facilities lack accommodations, which can result in potential safety concerns for cyclists. Next slide. And so here for option A, we see a right-of-way widened from 101 feet to 116 feet. Here we're seeing the rebalancing of the roadway while still maintaining efficient vehicle movement. Multi-use trails are included to dedicate shared space for cyclists and pedestrians. Widened buffer yards are accommodated with street trees for separation from traffic, providing shade and enhancing streetscape, as well as the inclusion of ADA accessible transit stops. Overall, in option A, this maintains the current vehicle capacity while improving pedestrian comfort and multimodal access and aesthetics. Next slide. And then our last option for this corridor is the right-of-way being widened from 101 feet to 112 feet, rebalancing the roadway yet again. Here we see the inclusion of a two-way cycle track for a dedicated facility and a protected space for cyclists. Bollard posts are included for a physical buffer for the cycle track. We also see the inclusion of enhanced sidewalk and multi-use trail for comfortable and accessible use for pedestrian and cyclists. We also again see the widened buffer yards and street trees and ADA accessible transit stops. However, we do see here is a road diet to 5 lanes, which would help to calm traffic, reduce conflicts, and create more space for multimodal improvements. However, I do want to note that a transportation analysis for this recommendation of a road diet would need to be conducted to determine if vehicle capacity can support a road diet at this location. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ashley. And I also wanted to just acknowledge Marcia's comment there in the chat about VDOT and the inclusion of street trees along Braddock Road. It's important to note that with all of these concepts will require some level of coordination with VDOT. Fairfax County does not control the majority of its streets, and so any type of public street improvements would need to be vetted through VDOT as a result. And so, Marcia, thank you for bringing that forward. And just I wanted to let everyone know that that is part of the considerations here as we move forward with these types of improvements. But again, Ashley, I want to just thank you and just note that again these are ideas for discussion, and so we look forward to hearing from the task force on these types of proposals. Real quick, I wanted to go over open spaces placemaking before we get into some discussion, because this is kind of the last piece of the placemaking jigsaw puzzle as it activity centers here in Fairfax County are guided by what we call the Urban Parks Framework. This is a framework that is part of our comprehensive plan that basically outlines the design and function of urban park and recreational spaces in more of in a built context. It calls for an interconnected and publicly accessible network of parks by pedestrians and cyclists. And the park space itself, when we look at acreage, is defined by a service level standard that's outlined in our comprehensive plan of 1.5 acres per 1,000 residents and 1 acre per 10,000 employees. And so as we get to evaluating development proposals, we use a formula to determine how many new residents or employees a particular development may generate. And then the expectation would be that the development include an appropriate level of urban parks, both in acreage and functioning for those new residents, visitors, and employees. You can see a good example here. Again, this is from the Richmond Highway District Design Guidelines. So elsewhere in the county, but this is how urban parks are envisioned for the Richmond Highway corridor. And we may be able to use a similar type of framework here in Fairfax Center area, but you can see some good examples of both active programming of parks and then also passive programming. You can see active are the things that are more like, festivals or play features or, playgrounds, games, ball fields, ropes courses, climbing walls, et cetera, so forth. Passive tends to be more things like seating, trails, open spaces, things where people can go for maybe not for active play, but for more respite and relaxation. But the idea here is that the urban parks framework would accommodate all of these different types of uses in various ways. And so this is just a good matrix of ideas for the Richmond Highway corridor, and we would expect to see the same or similar in the Fairfax Center area. The Urban Parks Framework talks a lot about the different types of urban parks typologies, and we would expect that in the Fairfax Center area, we would see a variety of these different types of spaces. And so we might have pocket parks that are smaller areas for passive and active recreation within a particular development or an area. Civic plazas, which are more like large public gathering places. You can think of the Civic Plaza at Fairfax Corner here at the top as an example of those. I like this picture here too because it shows the active nature of these spaces where flexible uses right now it looks like it's set up for mini golf, but it could just as easily be set up for outdoor music or a concert or a market or something like that. You've got common greens that are typically larger than pocket parks, but these are more of you can imagine this is more of an open lawn area where you've got a variety of different activities, but for the most part, it's unstructured types of things. So you might see people using these areas for leisure or for perhaps throwing a frisbee or something along those lines, but generally unstructured play. And then linear open space, these are the types of areas that I mentioned with those livability spines, where you've got continuous green spaces that often link other areas of open spaces together. These are like linear parks or habitat corridors or stream valley parks, that sort of thing. And then finally, we have recreation-based parks, which really provide a focus on recreational amenities. I have an example here. This is one outside of the county, but this is from the county of Arlington. This is the Gateway Park Master Plan. And if you've traveled on a 66 as you're going into the city through this area, you'll see I-66 actually goes underneath this park. So this is unique in the sense that this park is actually built on top of I-66. And when we look at the Fairfax Center area, where the plan already calls for connectivity between Fairfax Corner and Fair Oaks Mall to the north, the plan is already calling for some form of connectivity across 66. And so maybe this is something that we look at here for the core area, where we might have a large open space with a park or a other type of amenity that sits actually on top of 66. I mean, of course, we've got some engineering and some legal challenges with that, but certainly if we're thinking big, maybe this is the type of thing that we might want to go for here in the core area as well. So now let's get into the we've talked a lot here, but I wanted to get into more of a discussion and shift focus here. But let's start talking about opportunities in the core area. As we go forward with this, I just want to remind the task force of the different types of things that we are considering here. These closely align with our policy plan elements in the comprehensive plan, and you'll see that the guidance that we ultimately come up with for the core area will fit roughly into these categories here. But everything from land use mix, such as how much housing, how much commercial space do we need, what's the intensity of that, and how is all of that designed? Protecting our environmental resources, as I mentioned, providing that multimodal transportation and those connectivity elements. Looking at the availability of housing, particularly affordable housing, and how that might be accomplished. Civic activities such as the government center or other areas, and kind of what the civic environment looks like. Our impact on public schools, as I mentioned, parks and rec, and then of course any type of cultural or heritage resources. And we don't have any particular historic resources in the core area, with the exception of the Ox Hill battlefield, which is just adjacent to the core. But I'd also like to expand this to start thinking about, what is the culture of Fairfax Center, and what are the things that are unique to the community that we can really highlight through placemaking for the core. So here, I'm not going to read all of these, but here are some guiding questions, I guess, for the task force. So as we start to frame this conversation, what is the desired experience that we want folks to have? How do we know that this is the Fairfax Center area? What is what are the defining characteristics of that, and what makes the area unique? Does the design work today? And if not, how could we change it? If we were building today from the ground up, would we do this the same way? Are there other places that you personally have been to or enjoy, or can use it as an example as we start to look at the overall vision for the core area. And then as far as the streets are concerned, what areas, are walkable, what areas feel like barriers, and where might we have those types of streetscape improvements that Ashley discussed. And then also talking about what is within the scope of the comprehensive plan in terms of land use, in terms of transportation, in terms of those elements that I mentioned in the last slide, and how can we leverage what's already there to better enable placemaking in the area. To do this, I thought we might conduct just a minor, like a SWOT analysis. Anyone who's ever done this before, it tends to be a good exercise to kind of frame the discussion in terms of what's working, what isn't, and what do we have that we can leverage, and what might we need to bolster a bit. When we think about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we look at. I tend to think of strengths and weaknesses as being more internal. That is, what is it that we can control through this comprehensive planning process that can produce either, what are the strengths in the comprehensive plan? Where might the comprehensive plan need to be maybe revised or bolstered a little bit to achieve the desired effect? And then externally, we have opportunities and threats. So these are things that are outside of our control as planners or as a task force, but we still need to be aware of. So, for example, we might have some opportunities that, different things going on in the community that we could leverage, or maybe a threat might be, as I mentioned earlier, as the county not controlling our own roads. And so with those being the purview of VDOT, certainly we have an opportunity to work with them, but that may limit our ability to really enact to the fullest extent the things that we want to enact. So just to think about where this are, I thought what we'd do is I'll go ahead and open up the conversation, and maybe we can start with discussing some of our strengths and weaknesses. What I'll do here, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to reshare this as a typable screen here, so that you can see what I'm including here in the overall slide. So just please bear with me one moment here, and we'll get this shared again. Okay, so you can see I'm able to type in the screen, and let's go ahead and open it up to anyone who wants to contribute. What are some of the strengths? Like, what do we think about as being a strength of the core area today?
I would say a very easy strength there is that it's right at the center of the county. And I would say the center of Northern Virginia, and we have all these major highways that are coming in too. It's very accessible through 66, 50, 29.
That's good. Yeah. It kind of speaks back to the original intent of the Fairfax Center area of it being designed as a destination. Any other ideas?
Hi, Ryan. This is Mary.
Hi, Mary.
I think Fairfax Corner is a real strength. The way it was designed, it's very vibrant. It's been adapted over time with the addition of the multifamily. So there was growth. It allowed for growth. And I have to say the street trees are a real strength.
Street trees in Fairfax Corner, or just
all
general?
Around the area, in the core area. It does have nice landscaping and street trees. And those street trees, just FYI, they're on the private property side of the street. So VDOT is not in charge of them. If we have to get around VDOT, putting the street trees on the private property is probably the way to go.
That is definitely one way of doing it. Any other ideas?
it's difficult to get around
Mhm.
from one part of Fairfax, the core area, to the other.
I'm going to put that over here in weaknesses.
In the weaknesses, sorry. I went straight to the
Yeah.
weaknesses.
That's okay.
And that bridge is really hideous. There's nothing gateway about it. It's nothing anyone wants to traverse to get to a nice part of Fairfax Corner and then to work your way over to the other part, which
Mhm.
is very hectic with traffic. It feels dangerous. It doesn't have nice connectivity.
Mhm.
I'm sure other people have contributions, so I'll be quiet at this point.
Ryan, I think a strength is that you've already got a decent amount of people who like walking there. Like every time I'm over, there's people using those walking paths. So you've got a population, I think, that would welcome some of these, changes to make it more walkable in that 15-minute city type of feel. I think another strength you have in that area is that you've got this very unique property on the Fairfax government property. To be honest, right? Like how many other places have some of these pieces like Fairfax Corner and Wegmans and the trails right by something like that? So the possibilities, I think, are very strong here.
This might be building off of the center of the county, but it's uniquely situated that you have shopping, housing, and a significant amount of green space, as well as a handful of parks within a 10 to 15-minute drive.
One thing I will say about the green space in this area, although we have green space at the government center and we have some smaller, privately owned urban parks, we, except for the Ox Hill Battlefield Park, which is just outside the core area, we don't have any public park authority parks within the core area just yet.
Yeah, I would add
that might be something to consider.
I would add that to weaknesses. And if the government center, the land there ends up being a place where a lot of the folks that are out here go to for that green space, the trails, and so on and so forth. And I know somebody just mentioned that it is close to other parks. You do have to get in your car and kind of drive out there. But it is nice that, it is so centralized in the county that it's not super far from anywhere.
Yeah.
I think the other strength is the proximity to Fairfax City and the potential linkages into that area.
Definitely, that's a good point. And it's although they have their own separate planning, we're still looking at that in terms of holistically how can our plans here in Fairfax Center align with what the city is doing. So that's a good point. Let's see, we haven't heard from Carrie yet. Carrie, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Maybe Carrie's audio is not working tonight. But certainly, if you have anything you'd like to add, please you can utilize the chat, or we can send an email, or however you like to communicate if you're not able to speak tonight. We certainly want to hear from you. Anything else before we kind of move on to the opportunities and threats in the area? We've got a good list here so far.
I think the other strength is that it does have a fairly robust transportation capacity, which might allow us to more flexibility. I think the road networks are pretty full.
Yeah,
they're not suffering in the core area. from being too narrow or too out of date or anything like that.
Yeah. We'll be looking at the transportation study in greater detail in a future meeting. But yeah, that's yeah, Mary, I think that what you're saying is certainly, you know, what we've all experienced anecdotally, and that, you know, as we're driving around, it doesn't seem to be like we're in an area that's really suffering from some of the congestion issues that other parts of the county have.
And I would love to add to what Mary just said. The new I don't know if it's bus depot that was built right there.
Yeah,
By
the
Fairfax
transit center.
County.
Yeah.
Yes, the transit center. That allows for us to continue to increase the capacity for transportation. It'd be amazing to have to be able to get around easily by bus to where you need to go. And then that would also obviously cut down on traffic.
Definitely.
If that worked.
Yeah, we've got a lot of strengths. Are there any more weaknesses that we can think of to kind of build out this list a little bit more?
I mean, I think the lack of connectivity from section to section.
Yeah, that gets to the first point. Within the core area, there are areas that are very easy to get around, but getting from one part to the other is difficult.
Yeah.
And I think we did talk about I think Mary did speak about sidewalks maybe in the pedestrian side of things. And I wanted to add to that where it is nice. They've been increasing sidewalks in this area. But a lot more work still needs to be done. You know, like there's like the pedestrian areas right by 66 to hop onto the toll lanes. There's certain areas where it feels very unsafe still. And this fall, unfortunately, a young woman was hit crossing Forum Road in 29 and she died crossing using a crosswalk. So I would like to see more safety for pedestrians and making sure that we are, you know, laying things out in a way that people can get around safely, you know, by foot, by bike.
Definitely. Jimmy, did you have anything else that you wanted to add on this slide? Either a strength or a weakness?
Sure. That pedestrian comment really hit home. Yeah, you know, currently it's heavily dependent on owning a vehicle. And 66 being right there, folks are at highway speed. And, you know, so it's not very clear when you're coming into a quote unquote pedestrian area. That could be helpful. And this may be outside of our control, but, you know, one of the weaknesses are industrial area nearby, the landfills nearby. So we have not only residents going to the transfer station, but also large vehicles, and so we're just adding more large vehicles on the road, and bringing in more cyclists. Somebody already mentioned the bridge, so I don't need to.
The other weakness is the Fair Oaks Mall. I mean, it's a plus and it's a minus. It's just right now we have a lot of empty stores and big parking lots that are underutilized.
Well, I think that goes to 66 cutting through what could be a more connected section too, right? Like that bifurcates it from being kind of a whole with Fair Oaks Mall and Fairfax Corner. Right. I mean, if there's an area that's ripe for transit zones, it seems like this area is.
Brian, I had a question, or maybe this is for Tom Burke in FC Dot.
Sure.
Just the other day, I went back over to the Fair Oaks Mall side to look at where that train would come if it would come. And the ramp that goes off of the express lanes that takes you up to the government center area. That pretty much takes up all the right of way for any kind of train. They're really, I mean,
yes,
we've we've had conversations about that. And there was when Transform 66 came through with their planning, there is a long-term ultimate scenario where this metro station comes in and they'd have to rebuild that ramp to connect over on the extended stay hotel side. I'm pretty sure I can track that down, but there's actually a plan that VDOT and Transform 66 did that showed a relocated ramp that kind of swung across and connected to Monument on the north side, like the promenade side. But yeah, that has been thought of, and VDOT had to when they did the Transform 66 improvements, they had to not preclude Metro Rail. So in spots like that, they had to come up with, if Metro Rail does come, this is what you could do to kind of make it work.
Is that possible for you to send that out to the task force? I think that's pretty important to know where the ramps are in a future condition.
Sure, I'll definitely track it down. I'll send it to Ryan.
That would be good.
Sounds good. I think that's probably a good segue into some of our opportunities and threats in the area, unless we have any more strengths and weaknesses at the top of anyone's mind. We can always come back to this. But again, the opportunities and threats, think of this as more of the external, outside of the comp plan types of things, similar to strengths and weaknesses, but things that we might be able to leverage. Think maybe community partnerships or working how we might be able to work with VDOT in these types of situations. But of course, if anyone has any ideas, let's keep this good brainstorming going.
I would say one of the best opportunities here is the ample parking lot space that is underutilized that allows us the opportunity to build, up instead of out. And the fact that you do have Fair Oaks Mall, and I guess Fairfax Corner is already doing this, but it's just being able to create more mixed use spaces that are walkable where you have residential and commercial and also easily accessible government services with the government center there. So it's almost like you'd be able to create a hub for folks where if they didn't want to leave, they didn't have to because everything's right there.
I think that's a great point about the parking garage because we don't have that many public parking garages. Of course, there's the one that they built in Springfield, but what that allows us to do is similar to what they did in Bethesda with Bethesda Row. By having a public parking garage, they were able to put in much more dense commercial, like shops and streetscape areas and housing because there was a place for people to park and each individual business did not have to supply all of the parking. And I don't know what kind of shared parking arrangements could be allowed with this government building. And I know in Bethesda, they did something where the commercial businesses, the residential, they had to pay into this fund for the public garage. But that's what really makes that downtown area work. And I like that. I think that I'm not saying that Fairfax Corner should look like Bethesda Row, but I like the way that it adapted in that area from what it used to be. It is very vibrant on the weekends, lots of people. There's also parking along the street, which helps create a little bit of a buffer from the people that are walking on the sidewalks. And there's lots of public places. So anyway, I think there's opportunities with that parking garage if we know what the rules are, how we could use it better. And then, of course, the mall is a huge opportunity.
Hey, Tom, Question for you. Do we have any shared use agreements with the transit station garage or transit center garage today? Or is that strictly county use? Or public use for the transit center?
That came from I-66 toll money, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's all connector routes. I
Mhm.
think there's a couple metro bus routes that come out to the mall, but I don't know if they go to the garage. I'd have to check on that. Is that what you mean? Is the garage for use by other agencies or just connector?
Well, I was just thinking if there was an opportunity where would it be possible for there to be some private use element in that garage or a shared parking agreement between public and private uses in the area?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, and I'm not sure we'd want to do that because at some point that would be part of the garage infrastructure for the metro rail station.
Oh,
You'd like walk across. No, I think we've envisioned like raised pedestrian bridges connecting the garage to the future metro rail in the median. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'd need some more context, but I'm not sure that's something we'd even want to consider.
Okay.
we have
Unless it was-
something, maybe it's a private garage that's connected to the public, but at the Dunloring metro station,
That's true.
those are connected, and we have retail on the front of it and parking on the back and housing.
Something we could look into.
But yeah, it's probably a metro owned, and maybe they have more flexible. But it would be great to look at that.
I think,
Yeah, that may be a model that we can apply here if we have precedent for it.
I mean, honestly, I think an opportunity, and maybe this isn't the right place for this, but to reimagine, and I think, Ryan, I've talked to you about this a little bit, reimagine government, civic, and private, like mixed use retail housing life together in one spot so it's seamless, right? So you've got civic life. I think that there's not a lot of places I can think of that I've been to that have this seamlessly done and designed. So, people take for granted that you can go get your coffee and go see some art and go to a library and also, access government services, like to build trust in government as part of everyday life. That's a big theme. Like there's such distrust and separation between people and government, and having a rare opportunity to seamlessly infuse government as a positive, as a resource, right? As a source, not just of like, hey, I need to go pay my taxes or I need to get this service, but as a source of entertainment and there's art and culture. Like we have a unique opportunity to create this. And I think that's a huge opportunity. That's not entirely up to us in terms of how we do it, but it would be sad if we couldn't create a new type of space, that's a model for other civic redevelopments.
Definitely.
I also think that this is a great opportunity to increase our housing inventory, which I know is already a part of the plan, increasing the inventory of affordable housing. And I remember I think a couple years ago, Ryan, you sent out something, and I believe it had like a demographic study in it. And I don't remember the exact percentage, but I remember it was very high. Maybe it was like almost 90% of the people who live within the core area are renters. And that was something that I flagged then. It would be great to also increase the inventory of available homes to purchase or to increase home ownership in the core area as well.
Yeah, this area is unique, and I confirm that is that we do have a very high percentage of rental folks versus home ownership. It's somewhat unique in the sense of most of our other suburban centers have a more balanced mix between home ownership and renting. In most cases, we have more homeowners than we do renters.
Ryan, as you move out to Fair Lakes, there's much more ownership.
Yeah.
Just outside of the core area. And I know that we have a lot of SSPAs coming in over there for townhouses to replace some of the office.
Yeah.
And in the core area, I think that's a good observation, to add ownership opportunities.
Ryan, as this conversation continues, my list of opportunities grows. Maybe I'll send you a file. But a couple of things I just wanted to highlight so we can get on the screen here is keeping disability accommodations at the front of mind when designing pedestrian interactions, especially at intersections, but also entrances to buildings and leaving garages, etc. There is a gentleman on here from the art side of things, and I just want to throw out there that we have this opportunity to use art to help inform both direction and space. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. If we're thinking like huge big picture here, some type of skyway over the highway to connect the centers and the cores. We talk about making government more accessible. If you have to go to the government and then get in your car and then drive to the place and then find the parking, et cetera, that discourages. We also have the opportunity to monitor emissions in the area with a variety of sensors. And the bike barriers, I'd be happy to have a more in-depth conversation about this, but I am a huge proponent of permanent bike barriers. Paint and plastic don't stop cars, but curbs and street divisions do. And then one kind of like fun thing along the art side of things is if we do have a sister city, it could be a nice finishing touch to maybe incorporate a piece of their city design or their art into our final project. Maybe if we have the funding for one of those neat little portals where you can see your sister city.
Oh, that'd be a neat idea.
I've seen that in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And emergency call boxes throughout that go to the emergency resource that folks need at the time. And I got a bunch of stuff, but I'll save that for email or follow-up.
That's all great stuff, Jimmy. And I like how you're thinking big, because this is exactly the place for it. If we don't get it into the comprehensive plan, it'll never happen. And so, big picture thinking is always good at this stage.
Well, since there's been a lot of discussion about arts and I represent the local arts agency, let me chime in here with a couple of thoughts. One, I think we have an opportunity to consider how we activate spaces and what is necessary for those spaces. So in your presentation, Brian, you talked about active spaces that could hold festivals or opportunities for exhibitions. We need to think about what needs to be in place for that. Electricity, water, aside from parking. Too many times we make a plaza and think, oh, it's great for an exhibition. Well, but there's no electricity within reach, and we've got to be running all kinds of cords and generators. So I think we need to be thinking about what those spaces might be. In terms of art, I know we can't require developers to put art into their spaces, but I do think we have an opportunity to ask them, have they considered public art? Sometimes it's simply that question. And if we aren't asking that question, we aren't getting the opportunity to see what the answer is. So I think it's beautiful that there's some pieces going into place with the new build close to the government center with a mural and the possibility of a sculpture, but more of those things. You asked at the beginning of your session, what defines Fairfax Center? Well, I don't live in the district, full disclosure, but I don't know what defines it. And is there an opportunity then for either gateway signage or some sort of wayfinding that is a cohesive look that brings that area together? And then finally, I think, I love the idea of a sister city and sort of incorporating artwork into the design. I think art is always a beautiful thing to have. And I think there's an opportunity to engage the community in conversation about what that might look like, and how it links other pieces together.
That's great feedback, Stuart. And I know that as we get kind of in the next part of this exercise, we have an opportunity here that as we're looking at the core area as a whole, we can actually define where we might want those public art features to go in the core area. Like where might be a gateway or where might be a focal area of the core area that those types of things would be, welcome and appropriate. I did add a word in here for those non-planners in the room. A proffer is essentially a voluntary contribution by an applicant in a rezoning case, and so in this case, we could encourage that as areas redevelop, we could encourage that public art would be voluntarily put into that aspect of the design, and so that's one way in which we can encourage that in the area. Do we have any kind of keep the conversation moving here? I know we've talked a lot about opportunities. Do we want to maybe shift over to maybe some threats that we might see or external things that would prevent any of these opportunities from happening?
Funding,
absolutely. Absolutely. That's always a threat. Definitely.
I mean, I think a threat is we don't really have a vision of what Fairfax is, right, as an entity. And then so we're building all of these pieces that would go into an identity of a place, but we don't know what the identity of that place is. Right? Like, are we going to highlight Fairfax's uniqueness in this Fairfax core area, like Great Falls as an example, or some of our, our history, our historical places. But I think this group maybe should have a conversation, or some group, about what is that vision and culture of Fairfax that we want to highlight.
Yeah, definitely. And we will have a future task force meeting as we start getting into kind of reviewing what is currently in the comp plan for the vision and how we might be able to adapt that, to this core area, and kind of helping to define what that uniqueness and what that character is. Anyone else have any ideas for this particular box? This is a little bit abstract in the sense that we are, kind of thinking about things that would prevent us from doing what we want. But
I assume public support.
That could be definitely. I think that not getting it, certainly. The idea is that by the time we're done with this process, we would have the public support in all of our plans. But of course, public support can change over time depending on what folks' priorities are. So yeah, that's a definite possibility.
Different priorities coming from developers or people who own different parcels.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'll say landowners.
Sure. Feel free to change mine, Ryan, because you're much more articulate than I am. I'm listening to drilling here.
Oh, no.
Working on our heat again.
I'll add one in here that just to capture it that we've talked about, but just the need to coordinate between other agencies outside of the county, whether that's VDOT or whether that is another agency that we would need to work with. It's also an opportunity, but we can list it here as a threat as well.
I think the economy is always a threat. I mean, hopefully we are working on the opportunities to address the economy, but the economy and where it invests in Fairfax County or elsewhere
Yeah.
in the country. Which I think gets to that vision issue that the supervisor mentioned. You know, you have to attract investors to be your partners, and they have to see something, as do the people who would want to live here.
Yeah, definitely. The comprehensive plan certainly has a role in shaping what's possible and in shaping the economic development opportunities, but it doesn't. We don't control the market certainly, and so that's always a concern. Okay, well, unless we have any further ideas, we can always come back to this. But let's go on to the next part of the exercise here. It was just kind of maybe a mapping exercise. I'm hoping this will be kind of fun for everyone. But in this next slide, I've got an image here. This is I will share this with you here. This is basically a notional framework that we came up with as staff, just kind of spitballing a few ideas in terms of what we might want this area to look like. Just for discussion purposes to get the thoughts going. Nothing here is finalized at all by any means, but you can see here like kind of some of the things that we've seen in the core area. We've got this inclusion of a new metro station. Maybe it's in this area right near the transit center. Kind of what we might want that area to look like. We've included kind of where we might see some opportunities for completing the streetscape in purple there. So having those complete streets, as well as some opportunities for more of like an activated streetscape, like a Main Street type environment. So for example, down there at the government center, we might see a Main Street along that main entryway into the government center along the open space areas. I know back in the original 1986 master plan for the government center, that area was envisioned as more of an activated, area. And then we see the activated Main Street at Fairfax Corner, like Ashley had mentioned, that opportunity there, which that does, to some extent exist today, but how might that be improved going forward? And then also at the mall area, the opportunity to introduce perhaps maybe a grid of streets in that area and have that be more of an activated area for streetscape as well. But again, these are just ideas. I think the other big idea that we had here was creating kind of a transit civic space across 66, and so we might have something like a big park or something like that would go between Fairfax Corner and Fair Oaks Mall to provide that connectivity and kind of no pun intended, but bridge the gap in access between those two areas.
Is that kind of like what they did in Boston with the Big Dig and the Greenway? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah. So just some, like, again, this is just an idea for kind of what we may be looking at for ultimately what we would put forward for a framework for the core area. But I wanted to get your all's idea in this next slide. Let's start with a blank map and kind of based on everything that we've covered tonight, where are the areas that we see here as a group that we could improve, or places that we might want to re-envision as part of this process.
Brian, when we talk about having like fairs, and which we're not talking about on the government center anymore, doing like a big Fairfax fair, but the farmers markets and such, we've never really seen them at Fairfax Corner, have we? Sabrina, maybe that's a question for you. I don't recall ever any kind of farmers market at Fairfax Corner.
There was the one at the government center. Fairfax Corner, I don't think has ever had a farmers market per se. I think they might do like a couple artisan markets throughout the year. It's like 2.
They don't do a lot of programming, not like Mosaic. But the government center grounds or the Main Street or whatever we're calling this activated area. I mean, that could certainly host, and it could wrap around. So right now you have the two orange lines going down the center, and then you have the area that's sort of closed off right now in front of the government center. Somehow connecting that into an area that you could host these types of fairs where you can close the roads down and it isn't going to screech the whole area into gridlock. And you could provide a way then for people either through walking or whatever kind of connection that's going to be through the green space. If there's one there today that could be enhanced. And I saw people actually yesterday, walking through that connection with their dogs and whatnot, walking over to government or to Fairfax Corner. But enhancing that connection, thinking about how it could be used to fill those gaps that we really can't really just depend on Fairfax Corner, who's not shown too much interest in those sorts of community events. Plus we have all the the wine tastings and the music that goes on in the back of the government center. And that, I don't necessarily see how the back of the government center, if that is going to continue to be used that way, how that works with the front of the government center. And maybe you move all those activities to the front of the government center.
Yeah, I know, Mary, you and I have talked outside of this group about that, but that was one of the ideas that our government center visioning consultant put forward of how do we make it more accessible to the public. That the ellipse is nice, but it's just not it's not configured in a way that's readily accessible. You need to walk through the building, you need to go downstairs, then you need to exit the building to go out back. And so, maybe there's an opportunity to bring a lot of those, public community type events to the front of the government center through, maybe some new open space or something like that, in order to have a defined area for those types of places that's more accessible so that more people can access those types of things.
And if it's a bigger event, using the back of the government center is helpful.
Yeah.
So how can you have something big in the back, something that connects in the front? I think this front back connection with the government center is an area, if you're looking at the government center visioning, that's something to look at a little bit closer. And I don't see that really represented on this map. The other question I have for you is that if the plan is already going forward to the Planning Commission this week, and as a result of this process, we identify some areas that really should be on the map that aren't, because they look, if it's not on the map, then a development comes in and says, I'm going to build my XYZ. If it's not on the map for them to put a trail in, they don't have to put a trail in.
You're referring to the active
Fairfax
transportation
plan.
Active Fairfax, yeah.
Right, the sidewalks and bike lanes, whatnot. So if this amendment goes forward, can it then amend the bicycle plan?
I certainly believe so. I mean, I don't see, right now we have the ability to do that, through a standard, comprehensive plan amendment where we would amend the transportation planning along with the main body of the comp plan itself. But Tom, do you see any issue with that at all?
I don't think so. No, it's definitely not meant to lock everything in. I think there's
good
flexibility. Not exactly sure how it would work, but I, especially in activity centers like suburban centers and like the Fairfax Center, I'm pretty sure that our plans will take precedence over the active Fairfax, but something else we'll probably need to look into, get some details on that.
Yeah.
I want to add to Mary's point, not just farmers markets, but like artisan markets or maker markets, things like that. Sort of what Mosaic has, which has a farmers market sort of infused with some of those artisan maker markets. maybe even different themes each week or each, however often they are, or like it'd be nice. I know they have the summer concert series, but it'd be nice if that one was like a feature, sort of like the size of Rock the Block or the size of the Herndon, right? Like it's a little bit more of a feature because there's a space there to do that in that back ellipse part, as opposed to just one more summer concert series. Especially if you combine that with like a maker market, right? So you got the summer concert going on, a maker market going on out front, or an artisan market.
Food trucks.
Food trucks, exactly. Like making it a festival type atmosphere.
Are you speaking specifically to the government center, or is that more broadly speaking to opportunities within the core?
I mean, I was kind of thinking the government center, but it doesn't have to be there. It just seems like that with that ellipse to have a bigger concert series, and then the front area to do like a maker artisan market with food trucks seems like a ripe opportunity there. But really, just to have that sort of a small festival type atmosphere like Mosaic does, right? And I also think like it's a great place to have community events that happen each year. Again, looking at Mosaic as a model, they have regular like they have a little holiday parade, or they might have a Lunar New Year festival, or I'm just sort of, but that's another great opportunity to use that space for some of those sort of cultural celebrations.
The other nice thing about that is it's a sort of a safe place. Like you don't worry about being run over. I mean, they have to close the streets down, and these are all pretty big streets. Unless you're on the private property of Fairfax Corner. As I said, we haven't seen that type of programming there, just on a very small scale. I think this should be the center of fun.
I agree. This is kind of when you think of what is, when you think of like, oh, look, I missed this about Fairfax, this should be the thing we miss. Like when you leave Fairfax, like, oh, I want to go back to Fairfax Core because I can do all these cool things there and hang out with my family, or I mean, for multi-generations, right?
I've seen some amazing concerts at the Fairfax Fair, which I know we're not doing anymore, but I say, why not? Can we still manage? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't look exactly like it used to, but why can't we still celebrate at the Fairfax building in just a different place, a different way?
Well, in the way that I think is morphed to how people do it now, right? When you look at cities that hold these sort of festivals, they're smaller, but they're just as fun, right? And they're, you could do once a month where you have different stages, even, or a beer garden kind of thing.
Yeah. When I think of the county, I think of Fairfax County as being very innovative as well. And I think we've been talking about like what is the character of the county and what would be the character of the core. Now I don't know if this is feasible, but something that I would really love if it could become the center of innovation. We talk a lot about affordability when it comes to housing, like on the residential side. We don't really talk about it on the commercial side. So if there was an opportunity for us to help our small businesses here, I love the food trucks. Maybe the food trucks could be an easy way to enter that, because you're just allowing the food trucks to park on your property. But even to have maybe some like retail space that is either rented at a below market rate for our locally owned small businesses, incorporating that in somehow. I have many ideas there, but again, I don't know like the legality side of things, and how that would work into feasibility. We've talked to some folks at the county a while back about what they could do there to support and either help new businesses start or existing businesses. But that would add, more diversity to like the retail and the food landscape while helping our neighbors do better and adding money to the economy.
I think it's a great idea.
Another thing,
that's a great idea.
Well,
another thing too, if I could quickly add it.
Oh, sorry, I've got a thing on that. So yeah, finish.
And I don't know if this is feasible either, but with the affordable housing, I don't know if we could move towards making that also mixed use and adding some retail at the bottom, because that might be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's generally the idea in terms of the vertical mixed use in these higher density, higher intensity areas, is that we would have more of a retail along the ground floor and activate that space, and then you would have housing above that. So that's I know we've seen several proposals that have that in terms of a model. So
Yeah.
definitely something to consider, especially around those transit station areas where we're looking for the highest intensity.
Yeah, and I would love to see like
Right.
that retail space to be, available at
Mm-hmm.
affordable prices, because things are, as a small business owner, things are getting to be very, very unaffordable very fast.
Yeah, the idea of a kind of a business incubator or something like that was one of the things that was brought forward in government center visioning as an idea for how we might be able to use some of our public space to support that. And so,
Yeah.
certainly we have that on the radar in that project, but maybe there's some other opportunities, in the core area as a whole where we can do that.
Ryan,
That's a great idea.
there's a model for that. If you mentioned the Boston streets, but if you look at Boston Seaport, there's like a public land space where they have like almost like a permanent structure for pop-up businesses. They're a little smaller than a typical storefront, and they rotate the businesses through there. So you could build that in some of the public spaces, and then you could rotate the businesses every 3 months to kind of give them visibility and startup. So there's a model that you could look at or if there's a bridge that walks to the metro, along that bridge as well as in the government. I think there's a model that you could look at for that.
We'll definitely look up the details of that. I know we had Boston Seaport in our notes from our last meeting, but we'll look at the
I've seen that in a lot of
businesses.
areas.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of areas where it's almost in between. It's not a full building, but it's more than I don't want to call it a shack, because that evokes like, but kind of like a rustic feel, but it's a nice looking retail shop, and then they rotate the businesses through there to give them a start. And I've seen that in other municipalities as well.
Yeah, that would be amazing, right? Like if it was the government helping, because yeah.
Exactly. That's why I don't know what the details of how they do it there, but that sort of model is something that maybe we could use, right? To your point, like, and make it more affordable for businesses. It's kind of like some restaurants started as food trucks and they eventually became restaurants, right? You hear that story a lot. Like that's the kind of model I was thinking, where it's a business where the government could help them, and then they rotate in and out with an application process, and hopefully I'll help them get to a bigger space.
Let's see, Jimmy, we haven't heard from you yet. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Sure. I do like the idea of the Seaport pop-up business, and the one innovation that comes to mind is like a maker's space, where it's very similar to what was just described, but instead of a business, it facilitates individuals who want to learn a craft, make art. It can also function as like a community space or adult programming, et cetera. So something along those lines. And I'm also sorry, I'm doing double duty on dinner here. I'm also trying to figure out a way to incorporate like the government and the public safety facilities that we have nearby. I'm not quite sure yet where my thought process is going, but as a kid, I used to go to government sponsored like summer fun events, and there was always like police and fire around, like giving instructions on how to do things and just like being part of the community. So I'm trying to figure out how to articulate that.
Like a public safety fair or a touch truck or that sort of thing for the kids.
Yeah, or there was that dog, Ruff the crime dog, that would just like be out and about, and then also just trying to, if we're keeping this like person focused, somewhat of like an aid station or an I know kiosk or something along those lines, where people can get the immediate aid they need for the smaller bumps, scrapes, bruises, trips, and falls that you might encounter in an area like this.
Would that be more of a permanent feature, or would that be kind of more of a more as part of the programming for an event?
I think it could be all of the above. It could be a permanent station. It could be, roving, first aid folks on bikes, or, maybe the emergency beacons are the post in which a public safety official can be found during community events or something along those lines.
Okay, that's a good idea. I put community policing is kind of, and first aid station I put in there, so I think that captures it.
And then just going off of what Jimmy just said, maybe like a rec center type of place. I don't know what the need per se is. There are rec centers within driving distance, but there isn't one that is, I guess, less than maybe like 15 minutes from the core area by car.
Yeah, I know the closest I think is the
It's in Oakton. Is that?
It's in Oakton, yeah.
Yeah, Oakmont.
Yeah, it's Oakmont, which is they're off of Germantown Road, which is still driving distance away. One of the things that the consultant looked at in Government Center Vision, and we had heard that there may be a need for like a recreation facility or something like that, and they looked at whether or not the Government Center could accommodate that, and they basically took the footprint of the field house at George Mason and put it at the Government Center to see if it would fit. And certainly they could, the parking lot would be able to accommodate something of that size. But you would have to have, parking underground and things like that to get that to work. But that's one thing that was kind of brought up in that process of if there were to be a rec center or a health center or a community center, where might it go in the area? And along those same lines, when we'll kind of get into this discussion when we start talking about individual development proposals and the new population and things like that, but also looking at what the impact to schools might be and whether or not we might eventually need to plan for a new school somewhere in the area to accommodate all the new kids in the area. I know that right now I believe the schools are they're not at what the schools would consider a capacity overage, but they're about at that, for the upper levels at least, they're about at that level where anything further may be kind of looking at some capacity issues. But the elementary and middle schools, I understand, are within capacity and can accommodate future growth.
It depends on depends on where the boundaries end up and how many people are in there too. But I think, the enrollment numbers are going down.
Yeah.
In unevenly across the county, but going down. But I think this is another great opportunity. Kind of the rec space, but I would love to see like an art gallery space, a like small like theater incubator kind of, like an arts part of the civic center.
Just throwing something out there, maybe like a community garden.
Oh, that's a good idea. Community gardens are one of those things that's always in need. I think that when I last checked, the Park Authority's community gardens had a waiting list. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 years long, just to be able to get a community garden plot. And so they're definitely in high demand.
There's some serious gardening that goes on in those, and the community gardens that you see in a more urban area are a little more manageable. I had a 20 by 30 plot. It was like really being a farmer. It was too big. It was too much. Yeah. It was just too intense. But yeah, you can put a community garden in a smaller area. It doesn't have to be the park authority model that is truly shared by the people that participate. And it does not need to be such giant plots.
Yeah, I've even seen some examples where folks are putting urban gardens on top of parking garages or on top of residential buildings, or really being creative as far as where they go and how much space is actually needed. So there's a lot of really neat stuff going on in that space.
One of the things I didn't hear about much is the seniors, like even senior housing. We were supposed to get a senior like independent living off of Fair Lakes Parkway, which didn't materialize. They took the building down instead and put townhouses.
Okay.
So we still really don't have a lot of senior housing in that Fairfax Center area.
Shifting gears a little bit, is there anything in the core area that we do not want? Or maybe something that's going on now that we want to maybe discourage in the future? Or, I mean, clearly we've got kind of the known offenders like, surface parking and things like that, where, as we build up the core area, those things would be discouraged. But we've got a lot of really good ideas for things that we want to see, but just kind of flipping it a little bit, is there anything we don't want to see?
I think in one of the original plans I showed there was like a whole health center as part of that. I think that would be better off like near the Panino building as opposed to muddy up the rest of it. So that's the one thing I can think of. I think it's important to have, but I think it fits with the Panino building, and there might be spots in that do it there.
I'm not sure we want a data center in the middle of all this. Just saying. I mean, maybe a small one here or there, but yes, is there industrial land zoned within?
The closest industrial land is over by the landfill area.
Oh, well, that area, that might not be so bad on that side of the road.
The west side of Waples Mill.
On the west, on the other side.
Oh yeah, well we've got the self-storage areas over there,
and the offices in between. That's all industrial.
Oh, that's all industrial.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is a question. That's an interesting question. How far away from the metro is that office?
Well, the core area itself is roughly about a half mile to 3/4 of a mile, I believe, is how we define the core area. The self-storage is probably maybe a mile and a half.
So it's outside the 1 mile prohibition.
Probably.
So yeah.
Yeah.
It's close though. Depending on where that station goes in.
I think that would pretty much bust up that live, work, play thing to have a giant data center smack in the middle of this.
Or even self-storage uses. I'm not sure that would
or some more self-storage.
That's what I was thinking too. Like we already have 3 self-storages kind of near there. One huge one that's going in and 2 others that are already there, or some public storage maybe.
Yep, I second all of those. I don't think we need a casino up there.
I would agree.
That'd be a good regional draw for the area.
No parking. No parking.
Like not a casino, like a theater, like Reston Community Players or something like that would be cool to have in there.
We used to have one of those in Burke, and it's been long gone. So, and we don't really have community theater like a fixed place in Braddock, do we?
The only that I can think of is that the Church of the Good Shepherd, which is obviously place of faith, has a strong theater program, and they do, but it's not really like a Reston, Fairfax City Players or things like that. So I would agree with you, Mary. We don't really have, and that would be a ripe opportunity for something like a small theater, right? Almost like bigger than a black box, but
it would be nice. And we don't have one in Springfield District either. Sorry, Springfield. I keep forgetting that you're part of this call. Jimmy, you're from Springfield, right? You're from Burke.
Well, the Workhouse has one. Lorton Workhouse has one. That's probably the closest I can think of.
Yeah,
That's
but that space at the workhouse is only 100 seats, and I think you would want something that's somewhere between 200 and 400.
Oh, I think there's definitely a need. I agree with you.
Yep.
I was supposed to say like a resting community, like where they have there, because they have other shows and things there too. That's like the perfect size.
So I know we're coming up here on our 9 o'clock time limit. So before we can of course come back to the conversation if we have more to add. Real quick for those who need to get going, I just wanted to cover real quick the next steps in our upcoming schedule. I did circulate this with the slides that I had sent out. I just wanted to let everyone see that there's I believe you can see the screen here. I did want to just share that there's been a change to the schedule here that's been highlighted. On our next meeting on the 16th, we're going to start talking about the land use scenarios. That's 2 weeks from today. And then we'll have the transportation study results on April the 6th. So just switching those 2 dates. The consultant needs a little bit more time to prepare those transportation results, but we'll be ready to share those in April for you. And then moving forward, this schedule, of course, if anyone has any questions on it, we can, of course, adjust. And I fully expect that there's going to be some changes as we move forward. But you can see the next few meetings of the task force are focused on the land use scenarios, where we start talking about the individual development proposals, government center visioning, transportation, this sort of thing. And then we get into, in the May timeframe, we start getting into drafting plan guidance and talking about the results of our placemaking workshop and how we can apply these concepts into the draft text itself. And then this, the final meeting of the task force then would be in July, at the end of July, and so that's going to set us up for public hearings in September and October of this year on this. But again, this is just a framework for kind of seeing how different meetings will fall out. I know we've already got a few conflicts potentially with some of the members of the task force being on other committees and things, and so we'll shift some dates around accordingly as those approach. But that's kind of where we are in terms of the next steps. And so after this meeting, we will of course distribute the video and we'll distribute the slides and everything from this meeting, and then that'll put us in a good place to start talking about that list of opportunities within the context of these development proposals that we have before us.
So
are there any
Ryan.
questions? Yeah.
Yes, the land use scenarios, what you're talking about there are the developer proposals.
Yes. Yeah, that's the we developed a land use scenario that we shared in the last meeting for the transportation study results. What we'll do is we'll start talking about the specifics of those individual proposals and the how we go about evaluating those within the context of this placemaking work. And we'll work with the nominators, of course. I know Brian, if you're still on the call, we would most likely like to have a chance for you and the other nominators to present briefly on the individual proposals, so the task force gets a sense of kind of what the proposal is, what your sense of thinking is on these, and what may or may not be feasible in these spaces.
On the 16th, that's when you'd like to have that?
Yeah, well, we can follow up after this, but yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking of.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this?
Based on what you heard tonight from the community and the task force, rather, input, are there some changes that you would be looking at before we get into looking at individual land use scenarios, or how will that factor in?
Based on what I've heard, I think that definitely everything that we've talked about in terms of where the opportunities are and the types of uses and the programming, I think all of that can very easily be accommodated in plan text. I don't see any real issue with any of that. I think that we may need to do some adjustment in terms of some of the meeting schedule and timing when we start talking about maybe some individual proposals. We might want to have maybe a deep dive on, say, maybe government center or another proposal or something like that to really flesh out the details of some of the larger proposals. But overall, I think that the guidance as it exists today in the adopted plan very much supports the types of placemaking activities that we've talked about today. We can of course always add in some additional specificity, but I don't see any issue with that at all.
Do we
Hi,
need
Graham,
to
you have your
wait
hand up.
for do we need to wait for the transportation component to talk about some of those options? They went by rather fast, and I think I, for one, would like to study them a little bit more. I heard one member talk about a cycle track because it's more permanent, it's safer, and there are certain roads where I would not feel comfortable with just a bollard and some stripes, or just some stripes, particularly along Fair Lakes Parkway area. But
Mayor, if I could jump in real quick, just to make sure that we're clear on the purpose of the next task force meeting, which is shown as task force meeting number 5. This wouldn't be a time at which we're asking the task force to make any decisions or recommendations on the nominations that are being presented. This is because the group started back in 2024, and we have kind of not only new members, but just kind of a renewed emphasis on the study. We wanted to make sure that information from the nominators was in the task force's mind as it's creating the future vision scenario. So we're not asking for anyone to say like, oh, this one, we're ready to go with this level of density, or even this particular concept or layout or land uses. It's mostly just to make sure that you have that information as you put together through those next couple of task force meetings, task force meeting number 7 for the government center, and then 8 and 9 for the plan guidance, that you have all that information kind of at hand. So we'd have this opportunity to synthesize not only the placemaking elements, make some adjustments to the concept that we would have for the entire framework of the land use for the core, and then also make adjustments to transportation and other factors. So it's not like gotta go straight from the placemaking ideas to the nomination recommendations. It's not intended to be that. It's mostly just so we have everything that you need to consider as you put together the concept for the broader core
this
area.
is sort of the landowners or their representatives' input. But I think they may be willing to be flexible as well as the first time out of the gate. Would that be correct, Brian?
I can't speak for all of them, not even all of the ones at the mall, but certainly, I mean, this is a long-term vision, right? And I think you have to have flexibility in that case.
And so what you're presenting is more near term, and what we're looking at is more long term, or maybe
our nomination is definitely much more long term.
Long term.
Oh, it's much, we also, we're lucky in that we have 100 and some acres that we're dealing with, and that is just by necessity going to be long term. That's not getting built out in 5, 10, or 15 years by any stretch of the imagination. So our particular nomination is very much a long term view that is just, by necessity going to change over the course of its lifespan.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time tonight. And again, I want to thank everyone for spending your evening with us. I hope that this was a helpful discussion. I think that we certainly heard some really great feedback about the types of uses and the things that we want to see for the core area. And so I look forward to taking this information, and we can revisit this as we go forward with the schedule here. If you have any questions, any comments, anything that you forgot to mention or are just thinking of, please feel free to email me. You have my contact information, and we'll ensure that we get that record updated and we get all the feedback sent out to everyone here on the team. I will go ahead and I will hang out here in case anyone wants to revisit that the opportunities or the SWOT analysis or anything else. But unless anyone else has any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that, I will look forward to seeing everyone in 2 weeks, and we'll get those invitations out and make sure that that's all on the books and ready to go. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Ryan.
Brian.
Mhm.
Are folks sticking around to add things, or I don't want to keep you too late? And I'm like, I can email, but
No worries at all. That's why I'm here. So
I love all the ideas I've heard. And
Mhm.
apparently we have 3 different sister cities, so we can
great.
pick from many.
That's 3 different.
But I'm
public art
excited that
displays,
one of
so.
them is Seoul, Korea, because we could have all kinds of K-pop fun.
Oh, nice.
I did want to add one thing. When you had the
Mhm.
map up there, and I
Yeah.
think it was like things you don't want to see is what we were going over.
Mhm. Yeah, let
Um,
me bring that back here. It was this part. Actually, I'm going to do it this way, make it easier on everyone. Um, I don't want to do the whole screen. Oh, sorry, just 1 second. There we go. So it was this area, right?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
And I think we all are on the same page there that we're like pushing multimodal transportation. I guess it's just like
Mhm.
don't want massive expansion of the roadways. I don't want
Mhm.
to see like new highways come through or stuff
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, that's generally out of character with the
Yeah.
mixed use multimodal nature of these urban centers, or suburban centers, and so we'll get a better sense of
Yeah.
all of that when we look at the transportation results. But the kind of guidance from the very beginning with that is that we don't want to see those massive expansions, and in fact,
Yeah.
in most places in the area, we're scaling back on those things like interchanges and whatnot. In fact, we just deleted from the plan a series of interchanges along Route 29 just to the south because study determined that we could accomplish the same thing at grade versus providing for interchanges.
Awesome. And then
So that,
one other thing in the opportunities section, and
Mhm.
again, I don't know how feasible this is, but it would be really great to because we were kind of talking about what this area represents and all that.
Mhm.
I mean, I am a strong proponent of like the maybe like the design or the architecture somehow reflecting either the culture or the community in a certain way. So if there is any way to add that into the design aspect,
Mhm.
I mean, that would be amazing. Um,
Absolutely, and those are the types of things that we can very easily add into the plan text, so that when at time of rezoning or time of design, we can work with what that exactly that might mean and develop some guidance, for that.
yeah,
Yeah, I was
that
going to
Mhm.
ask you what you had in mind by that.
me or
Yes,
Ryan?
Sabrina.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know what you all are the experts here. I think like the easiest thing would maybe be like I don't know some. Hmm. That is a great question because I have 20 thoughts going at once.
Mhm.
One, I mean, something that would have been like an easy thing that I can think up off the top of my head that isn't dealing with the government center, but like let's say like the architecture in Annandale. There's really like has a high Asian and Latino
Mm-hmm.
population. There's certain areas where there's a lot of
Mhm.
historic Korean businesses and they're like signages in Korean. Like it would have been amazing if something there was able to, something kind of like the Eden Center, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
full Eden Center, but it's just figuring out like maybe this is the, in it, we're saying Fairfax is innovative and they're just something very technical like tech forward or innovative about
Mm-hmm.
some aspect of design, or maybe we want to celebrate the diversity. I think it could go I don't know if any of this makes sense. So
No, it
No, I
makes
think it
sense.
absolutely does.
either in that route, or even if there are certain architectural style guidelines, like uh, you think of some of the older places, and I'm not an architecture buff, so so my like
Mm-hmm.
vernacular is also very limited. Yeah, I guess there's like a lot of colonial things going on here, something like
Right.
that, like character. Like if we're
Mm-hmm.
able to ground it in some sort of character where you enter and you're like, I know, like I'm in the Fairfax core area because the
Mm-hmm.
architecture feels this way or the design feels this way.
Mm-hmm.
Either it feels like mid-century modern or like feels like Fairfax City. Has been able to like retain some of that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, just like creating that aesthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is interesting when you go around the Fairfax Center area. It is sort of traditional. I would say it's more brick.
Mm-hmm.
It's more human scale than, say, a Tyson's.
Mm-hmm.
Even the multifamily building has a lot of earthy type,
Mm-hmm.
brickwork in it. And it looks much more modern, but it's just, it does not feel like it's all glass.
Mm-hmm.
And the question really is that those design guidelines that are in the comprehensive plan today, they're like from like the
Mm-hmm.
1980s. And are they still applicable, I guess? There's a lot of really nice things that have been designed in Fairfax Corner. And so, yeah, how do you do the innovative and still keep that sort of brickwork type look?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and the government center and the new transportation garage are very out there. I think the government center, the new residential, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think it's an interesting question. It's clearly, it evolves. It's an area that as you enter the era in which you're in, you're going to see that design reflected differently. And that's probably, good. Like in Annandale, those design guidelines, they say things like everything must be beige. They're really, really bad in terms of what you would want to see there. It doesn't seem to reflect the culture at all. So it's a good point. I don't know how to articulate that. I mean, it's something to think about. You always want an area to be able to grow. It's not like we just plunked Fairfax Corner down or Fairfax Center down and that's it. It's a continual evolution, but maintaining the character of it will need certain things. And in many cases, those are the streetscapes that stay. And that means that you're not cutting down all your street trees when you put in the new thing. Anyway, I don't have a particular answer because I can't put my finger on it either. In Fairfax Corner, Fairfax Center area, like what is it exactly?
Yeah.
So,
Mary, you'll remember when we did the AT&T Oakton plan amendment, recently. One of the questions that came from the community is how do we design a development that really reflects the character of Oakton? Whatever that means to the community. How do we get the design to really be an integrated part of the community? And so we had these discussions with local community members that we said, okay, well, it's going to be based on more of like a nature type of design, where you've got natural elements integrated into the building. You've got natural colors, you've got earth tones, this sort of thing. And not that the comprehensive plan defines a lot of that. I mean, we were fortunate to have a developer doing a rezoning at the same time and hearing this from the community. But, if we could maybe develop a framework for the future, rezoning applications and future development plans to really have that outreach with the community and really discuss what the new development should look like and how it can be made a cohesive part of the area. That might be a way where we can address the need to have that compatibility, but at the same time still be able to be adaptable for the future. And so we're not necessarily setting something in stone, but we're providing a process for tracking how that community character evolves over time. I don't know, just an idea, but
yeah. Well, Burke Center, for example, their motto is nature and community in harmony. And so the community always referenced that if something was being done to not support that nature and community in harmony.
Yeah.
This, I think, is a little different. I mean, we've got the nature and community in harmony. We've got a lot of nice natural features that we want to keep, but it's a much denser area.
And it is, yeah.
The office, the live, work, play. But it does have some really good bones here.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I can think about anymore. I got up too early and
well, you've had a long travel day, and I really appreciate your time tonight. I know it's been a long one.
Thank you, everybody. And I would love to get your notes back. And it sounded like quite a few people are still thinking things through and might have some additional emails to send you. And so if you keep us together on the information, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's feedback.
I loved what I heard tonight.
Well, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'd like to thank our Braddock folks for speaking up, Sabrina and Mary. And Jimmy did too.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to add him to that list for, I mean, there were a lot of good comments from everybody.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that Kerry's audio wasn't working tonight. I'm going to follow up with him separately to see if he's had any input. But
was he on the call?
He was on the call at least at the beginning, but he may have been having some audio issues.
I didn't see him on the chats. Yeah.
He was on the list, but he's sometimes had problems with Blue Committee meetings, and those are teams. So he may have also had a problem with Zoom.
Yeah.
But hopefully he heard the discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, sounds good. Again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Brian. Haven't planned the walk around. I don't know if anybody is still interested in that or not.
Certainly we are. Let's I'll send out an interest of email to see when folks might be available for that.
Okay.
I think that'd be a good idea, and I think the supervisor may also be interested in that.
Okay.
Well, Marcia, what and Sabrina, I know that you were very interested in kind of being the tour guide to some of this. But are we talking about like during the week or a weekend, or what do you think? I know, Marcia, when we did a Braddock Road walk, that was on a Saturday.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people come.
Yeah.
We did. My schedule is pretty much a nightmare from now till June, so I may or may not be able to do it. But
Sabrina, what days of the week are good for you?
I'm pretty flexible, but if you said a Saturday did really well, maybe like a weekend might be best, just to ensure that most people can, make it. Maybe like earlier in the day on a weekend.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because I mean we want it to be light outside, of course, and evening times are good for these types of meetings, but I think having it on the weekend would be good too.
And
like maybe a Saturday morning.
Maybe a Saturday morning. And
Not real early.
Do you,
6
Ryan,
a.m.
are you
Have fun.
thinking that we should sort of concentrate on like the government center and then sort of walk those grounds over to Fairfax Corner? Or is there another area that we could walk over to Fairfax Corner? We could, you know, look across the gaping gorge of 66 and envision what could be on the
Yeah, I
other
mean,
side.
we could kind of visit around the different areas. Although, I mean, to your point, not a whole lot of these are walkable areas yet.
No.
I mean, I don't know that it makes a
No.
lot of sense to do a walking tour of the mall area,
No.
where we just stand out in the parking lot. But I think, yeah, definitely the government center area, Fairfax Corner. We may want to go look at the reserve next door, and kind of just to get a better sense of how it is planned against Fairfax Corner along that boundary. And maybe we could look at the area around the transit station, things like that. Or we could look at other areas as well. But that kind of between the government center and Fairfax Corner, that's kind of the most walkable area, I would think.
Honestly, the best thing, if you could do anything, it would be to get one of the buses. And
Yeah,
I did this for Woodley Chase, then Northern Virginia Training Center, and that was a great way to do it. Of course,
That was
we
good,
had
yeah.
we had a developer who paid for that, but I don't know if there's any way to do that, but that's a way to have everybody together, where you're in an environment where people can talk, but you can see a little bit more than you're able to walk, or to walk easily, or people have short periods of time.
Right.
And walking half a mile when you're stopping and looking at things is a good half hour. And then you've got to get back. So there's an hour right there, and you haven't gotten very far.
Yeah. No, I think a bus is a great idea. We've done that same format before when we do like site visits for SSPAs across the county. We just, a few of us will get a bus and we'll do that as a group. So I think that we have the option of doing that. I just have to figure out the logistics. So.
I would recommend that just because that would be the most desirable. Sorry, I like walking as much as anybody, but for something like this,
it's too big of an area.
It doesn't work. And then
I think the bus makes the most sense. Although you can walk all the way from the government center through Fairfax Corner to the mall, but it's going to take forever.
Right. No, you certainly can
it's going to
do
take a very long time.
But you're also, and I learned this on the Braddock Road one, you're walking single file at places, or at most 2 people abreast, and you end up with 5 different discussions, depending on how many people you've got. So that's not always the most desirable either.
No, we want it to be a group discussion versus a strict walkability audit, for example. So
maybe we could, I keep pushing it off further and further, but if we're going to be talking about the different scenarios at the next meeting, which is coming up, not that far out from now, having it after that and including those on our stop, might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think once the maybe we look at, I'm thinking maybe we do either late March or April sometime for this. That'll allow it to be a little bit warmer out. And we can plan far enough out to where people will have a free Saturday.
Okay. And I had to text somebody who was telling me all about this government type community center that provided all kinds of wonderful this and that and seniors and it had a pantry and blah blah blah. And I just heard back from them that it was Redwood City, California.
Redwood City, okay.
Yeah, the city of Redwood City. So I'll have to take a look at that. But they have everything all integrated.
That's like a community center?
Community center, and they have, all kinds of volunteer things and classes, and there's some fitness, and there's even some assistance, like, people will bring food there. And so I have to look into this a little bit more, but
I've added it to our list of opportunities.
Museum, that's part of it. That's what I remember hearing about. That's why I know about it, is that there's a museum, and that's what my husband works on. Works on all kinds of little things and, places all over the world. And some of them are civic minded. So I hear about a lot of these different things.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. I just really super quickly, Mary, thank you so much for bringing up the community assistance food bank thing. I didn't even think of that. But I mean, the government center is at the center. It would be really nice to have that. And the only place that I can think of that offers some of those resources is Reagan Oaks out in the Fair Oaks area, that community center. But I'm not sure if there's anything else out here. They do, like, I used to be a homework help volunteer out there. And I know that they provide a lot of other resources. It's through Facets, I think.
Oh, Facets, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
I sent something to Ryan and Graham, I think. I may have just drafted it and it never got anywhere, but it was about the MLK Library in downtown DC.
I love that place. I mean, you can go in, people are doing the book tours. They stop there and it's packed. On a weeknight, you have people.
There are authors who come in, speakers. Yes. They have an art gallery type space. They do ESOL classes. They do, they have so much going on there. It's been a while since I was there, but I used to go over there when I lived in the city and even after I was out here. And they just, I think that is an example of a way that you've got a library and a civic space and a lot of community serving functions.
Yeah.
And a museum up on the top floor, the Go-Go City. That is a great exhibit. That's permanent. Yeah, that's.
Is that there? I thought that was somewhere in Southeast.
Go-Go museum.
Oh, okay.
They have up on the top floor sort of a permanent exhibit on Chocolate City and Go-Go history, and that's interesting. And they have a slide that goes all the way down to the bottom for kids.
Oh wow!
Here we got it, Ryan. It's right there. Let's do it.
Awesome.
That. A slide, a whole center.
We need a slide.
There's some great examples in DC. John Carter, the planning commissioner for Reston, is part of an architecture membership, and they have tours of some of these facilities. And the one that's down by the wharf apparently is quite amazing. But they have a lot more money, it seems. Capital budget.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was fun.
Excellent. Yeah, this was great. I thought this was a very beneficial conversation. So I'm happy the way it turned out.
I like having the interactive portion of the meeting, Ryan.
Yeah.
That was good.
I did too.
And I think it worked well, even though people are remote.
Yeah, I was experimenting with it earlier, trying to get it to do this in virtual format. We hadn't really done anything this interactive yet, so I'm glad it worked out well.
It worked great.
No, this is the same as writing on the whiteboard or on the huge Post-it note paper.
Yeah.
But you can erase.
And distribute it. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off, but thank you. Good night.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Have a good
all.
night. Okay. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, Ryan.
Mhm.
Still trying to leave. There it is.
I lost leave.